We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance, and if you'll all stand and join me for that. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll for us?
Good afternoon. Directors Bradford,
Here.
Houlihan,
Here.
Clark-Kretz, absent. Maple, Teeter, Villegas, absent. Vice Chair Hume,
Present.
Vice Chair Kozlowski,
Also present.
and Chair Baines absent.
Okay, first on our agenda is public communications. This is a time for anyone who wishes to address this board on an item that does not already appear elsewhere on the agenda. Is there anyone that would like to comment?
There is no public comment.
Okay, seeing none. Last bit of housekeeping before we get to the main agenda, disclosures. This is a time for any director to disclose any conflicts of interest that they feel they have with the items that are on today's agenda. Are there any? Okay, hearing none. We'll now take up the consent calendar. Madam Clerk, is there anyone from the public who wishes to remove an item for comment?
There is no public comment.
Okay, directors, any of you want to comment on anything? All right, I'll accept a motion if there's one to be made.
Bradford will second.
Okay, we have a motion by Maple and a second by Bradford. Please call the roll. Oh, I'm sorry. Everyone in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Okay, abstentions? Okay, motion carries. Next item is our action item number 2, which is the 2025 blueprint adoption. Lisa Lind from the SACOG staff will present this item, and we have a moderately complicated voting process for later about this.
We'll go through that. Yeah.
Lisa, welcome.
Yeah. Good afternoon. Oh, sorry.
Well, just while we're pulling the PowerPoint up, we also have our CEQA legal counsel, Amy Higuera, on the line if there's any questions, and our consultant team from our EIR here if there's any questions on the EIR.
Fantastic.
Great. Well, good afternoon, Vice Chair Kozlowski and committee members. I'm Lisa Lind, Principal Planner at SACOG. We're here today with an exciting item. It's the adoption of the 2025 blueprint. This plan represents the collective work of SACOG, our member agencies, partners, and organizations to show how the region will grow over the next 25 years. And there are policies and actions to help prioritize investments and implementation. As a preview, the recommendation for today will have several steps, starting with the environmental document for the blueprint, the EIR. Next is the Metropolitan Transportation Improvement Program, the MTIP, and conformity analysis. And the last step is to recommend that the board adopt the 2025 blueprint. While we definitely want to get to the committee action, we really want to spend this time with you and during the presentation to cover how the plan was developed and recognize the work that got us to this point, including the board direction, the region-wide outreach, and the technical analysis that demonstrates what the plan can achieve. So we put a timeline together to just remind us of where we've been. There were key milestones that drove this process forward, really including 2 early board decisions. The first to pursue state legislation and allow more time to hear from people around the region, and then to adopt the triple bottom line framework. The board then set the growth forecast and evaluated future growth scenarios through the pathways analysis. And they followed up to approve an ambitious set of land use and transportation assumptions. And to meet each of these milestones, the board has heard from all 28 jurisdictions, Caltrans, transit operators, developers, organizations, and the public throughout the region. And from there, the board discussed policies to support that triple bottom line, and most importantly, to shape the work for SACOG and many of our partners over the next 5 years. The draft plan came together last spring as a local tour of all our county boards and city councils kicked off. And this was a chance for SACOG to co-present with local staff and really show how the plan reflects all the work that's happening in each jurisdiction. And then after the board released the draft plan and EIR for review, staff addressed the comments on both And we're now at a point in the process for the board to certify this final EIR and adopt the blueprint. So if we take a closer look at the plan, as the designated metropolitan planning organization for the Sacramento region, SACOG is responsible for maintaining a regional plan in collaboration with local governments. In simple terms, the 2025 blueprint is a plan for a thriving, inclusive future with a strong economy and healthy environment for all our residents. And since 2004, the region has integrated land use and transportation planning, doing an update every 4 years. With this update, there was more time, and this was for a really robust outreach process in order to hear from everyone. And what we heard was that we need more options for housing, complete communities, safe and convenient ways to get to the places we need to go on a daily basis, and really protecting our open spaces. This process helped make sure that the plan reflects a shared vision and balances regional and local priorities. Through a regional workshop, polls, and other events, the engagement activities reached nearly 6,000 residents, more than 300 elected officials, and many community-based organizations. And this was also our opportunity to learn about how implementation is going to fit the context of different communities. Now to walk through and highlight some of the components of the plan. Our region is expected to continue to grow jobs and housing at a faster rate than state and national averages. As we plan for current and future residents, it's important to look ahead to the changes in the population and the housing needed for people at all life stages. The plan assumes that 2/3 of the housing growth will occur in existing communities, and the remaining third will be in developing communities and rural residential areas. This is in line with how the region has grown recently, and we have another presentation after the blueprint item that goes into more detail about the positive trends that we're seeing. The plan calls for increased emphasis on filling in the region's center and corridor communities and envisions the revitalization of the region's green zones, suburban, and rural communities. The blueprint addresses housing affordability concerns through a mix of housing types and more options to live near high-quality jobs and good schools and options to get around. And we know that for the growth in developing and rural communities, the same principles apply. People want safe and walkable areas, job opportunities and amenities, and resilient infrastructure. When we consider the transportation needs for a growing region, the plan is required to address all modes of transportation, be financially feasible, achieve health standards for clean air, and meet our statewide climate goals. And what we heard from the people around the region is that we need to take care of the existing network and make it more efficient, whether it's roads, transit, bicycle facilities, and trails. So with that tall order, more than 1/3 of the total budget goes towards maintaining the transportation system, along with better use of existing capacity and supporting safety and technology solutions. With each update, we are able to reflect on the progress we've made, course correct based on new understanding, and bring forward ideas to address regional challenges. And when we look at the land use and transportation together, the plan achieves state targets with future development and infrastructure that work for the current and future residents. We're all really proud that this plan represents the whole region. There are vibrant places for people who want to live near transit and those who want suburban and rural lifestyles. This time around, we did more outreach, we heard from more people, and every city and town shows up. Local agencies can refer to the policies in the plan to demonstrate alignment when seeking funding from state or federal programs. And there are jurisdiction highlights added throughout the plan, and we're excited to actually highlight this more when we come together as a board later this month. This plan, the appendices, and the associated documents provide support for the process and decision before you today. We're asking for 3 separate actions, starting with certifying the final EIR and adopting the findings of fact, statement of overriding considerations, and the mitigation monitoring and reporting program. So CEQA requires this prior certification of the EIR before the plan can be approved. We prepared a programmatic EIR to analyze the environmental effects of the 2025 blueprint. The draft EIR was circulated for public review and comment from June 6th to August 8th of 2025. We received comments from state and local agencies, tribal governments, organizations, and public comments. We responded to the comments, and those responses are compiled in the final EIR. Next, the MTIP lists the transportation projects programmed for the next 4 years that use federal funds or have an impact on air quality. We keep the blueprint and the MTIP consistent with each other, which is why an amendment to the MTIP is also one of the action items today. We're also required to analyze the MTIP and the blueprint to meet air quality standards through the conformity analysis. In August, our team presented to you on the conformity lockdown throughout the state related to the status of vehicle emission standards. We're coordinating with the agencies who are actively working on a technical solution that will allow projects to move forward. So while the solution is determined by our federal partners, we can come back to the board with a focused item on that. We are recommending approval today because your action will also allow us to submit to the state for approval. Which brings us to the blueprint. The 2025 blueprint captures your direction as our board, an extensive outreach and input process, and the analysis. It's ready for you. Approving the 2025 blueprint shifts the focus to implementation, and we can move forward on programs and projects that help our region. With that, staff recommends to adopt the blueprint with the actions shown on the slide. Thank you, and we're available for questions.
All right. Is there a need to take public comment or?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
There is no public.
There is no public comment. All right, fantastic. So directors, question is before you. Do you have any clarifications that you would like?
Sure.
Yes. Director
Thank you.
Maple.
Thank you, Chair. No clarifications. I just really want to thank the staff for your extraordinary work on this. I know it's been a lot of meetings, a lot of work, a lot of community input, but all of that makes it better. And I know an extraordinary amount of planning goes into those things, into the community meetings, into all the process, soliciting of the input, and then revising the draft, make sure that it reflects the input, and on and on and on. And so I know a lot of that work happens behind the scenes and it's not always acknowledged or seen. So I just want to really just thank you for your work on this. So it's a beautiful document. I can't wait to share it with my communities.
Director Bradford?
Through the chair, hard to follow that up, but I want to echo really a lot of those comments. I know we've been working on this for years and there's been tons of staff time. It's been very iterative and lots of board and committee input along the way, lots of public input. I think it's been an outstanding process and definitely very happy with the final results and appreciate everything that staff's done and my fellow board members to get to where we are today. I did have one minor suggested update that I found while I was kind of skimming through it. I won't pretend that I read every word of the EIR, but on page 4-18 and 4-19, there's a list of some of the highways in the region. And SR 65, the description for SR 65 in both of those cases says that it goes through Sacramento, Placer, and Sutter counties. It goes through Sacramento, Placer, and Yuba counties. So anyway, minor change. So
We're moving it.
you know what?
It's one of
Can
the
you move the
projects.
traffic that goes with it? Then that's
They tell
fine.
you?
It's regionally significant,
Perfect. Perfect.
non-conforming.
Excellent. Any comments? Director Hume, anything?
No, sir.
All right, excellent. Well, we need to take this up as 3 separate votes, and we're approving this as a recommendation to the full board, right? All right, so if there are no other questions and there's no public comment, I will entertain a motion on component number 1, which is certifying the final EIR and adopting the findings of fact, statement of overriding considerations, and MMRP.
Mr. Chair, if I may, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, we can make a singular motion in a single second. We just have to have 3 votes on, or a vote on each of the 3 items. So I would move all 3 items.
Okay.
I'll
Is there,
second.
okay, so there's a motion to approve all 3 items by Director Hume and a second by Director Maple. And we'll take up the vote in 3 parts then. Yes, okay, so on component number one, which is the environmental impact report and mitigation monitoring and reporting program, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, any abstentions? All right, that motion is approved. The second component of this is approving amendment number 11 to the Metropolitan Transportation Improvement Program and the associated air quality conformity analysis. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, that component also passes. And then the final part of this is to approve the 2025 blueprint and our recommendation to the full board to also approve the Metropolitan Transportation Plan Sustainable Communities Strategy. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, hearing none, no abstentions. That item is complete.
Congratulations.
Yeah, to us all. And let me add that a lot of this is not glamorous work, and we're grateful for all the staff time that went into this, because it has literally been years in the making.
Chair Kozlowski, just a reminder, so as Lisa mentioned, we'll come to the full board. We'll do a little bit more at the full board and have a chance to dig into not just the sort of the blueprint, but also we're going to dig into those local jurisdiction highlights, because we've been saying for a while now, every jurisdiction actually sort of shows up very specifically in this plan in terms of your local priorities. So we'll run through those. And then also a reminder, we actually have a little bit of an unusual window right now because of the AB 350. We're 2 years late.
Oh.
Our next major plan update is not till 2031. And so we have time to implement. We have time to focus on this plan and actually focus on implementation. So that looks like a lot of those themes that you've heard in this plan. Housing, transit, safety, state of good repair, funding. So you're gonna hear more about what we and all of our jurisdictions and partner agencies want to do the next 5 years to implement sort of what we've heard, what we learned in the plan. So a little bit more time than we usually do. We have a minor update in 27, but the next major update is, of course, as you know, from experience now, you have to work backwards from 2031. So we don't wait until then to do the next plan. We start pretty well in advance, but we have time now to implement, and that's exactly what we intend to do.
So we'll be on the clock in like June.
Yeah, exactly. Not quite, not quite.
Excellent. All right, well, moving on, our next item is an information item number 3, tracking blueprint implementation through the regional monitoring program. Garrett Ballard Rosa is a SACOG staff member who will present this item, and I think some of that success thus far is going to be highlighted.
Absolutely. Well, I'm pleased to be here on behalf of the larger sort of data analysis team, and both Lisa and James in their comments really emphasize what I want to talk about today. Assuming you as the full board adopt the 2025 blueprint at your meeting, right now we really have this unique opportunity for implementation. But how will we know if the region is trending in the right direction on these policies and ideas that are contained in the 2025 blueprint? So in tandem with the planning work we do here at SACOG, we also have our regional monitoring program, or our data sort of shop, where we track trends across all of the strategic priorities in the blueprint: transportation, land use, housing, environment. And what we've actually done is stand up a new dashboard, which is outward facing, that actually has all this data. It's fairly recent in terms of the grand scheme of SACOG. It came out last year. We just want to also remind people, our partners across the region, that this dashboard is up there, and it includes a lot of these trends that you hear in the blueprint. It includes that sort of historical record, the past 10, 15 years of sort of what's been going on, to sort of give you that context when you're thinking about implementation, and then also the next plan update. In addition to the dashboard, what we try to do is we try to do a little bit of reporting and analysis. And so this year we honed in on housing. And so your attachment A is this, what we call progress report. And this year's is focused on housing. What we've done in the past is do a report every couple years to sort of tie with the plan. We're moving that now to an annual basis. So each year you'll be seeing a progress report like this, but each year what we're talking about is gonna be a little bit different. So last year, since we hadn't done one in a while, we just sort of said, what's sort of new? We know COVID was very disruptive. So we sort of looked at sort of what's some key differences we've seen in the region across a breadth of topics. This year, right, for the reasons you heard from Lisa and we know from the blueprint update, we really wanted to dive into housing. Next year, it's a to be determined, right? You as this committee and the board, right, can weigh in on sort of what you think should be the focus of our reporting for next year. What we just wanted to do right now is then go through some of those highlights, and again, how that connects to the planning and policy that we see in the blueprint. And again, what we will be tracking the next couple of years as we're looking at blueprint implementation to see if the region's on track to meet those ambitious but achievable outcomes contained in the blueprint. So we know housing, right, of course, is a key issue. We know you hear it all the time. We know through the blueprint outreach, right, it just really rose to the top as an issue facing the region. We did a little soft launch of this housing report last month with Valley Vision. They had a poll that just came out, which again, no surprise, housing and housing affordability for all different incomes and all life stages, a #1 issue facing the region. We know the challenges. I'm going to sort of recap some of them here, but again, we want to pivot to then looking at some recent trends and sort of some things to be excited about and some things to emphasize how they align with the blueprint. We know housing's an issue, right? I think oftentimes we think about housing in the California context. I know it's a little small, but what we do a lot of is we look at California, but we also look at what's going on across the country. And so we compare ourselves to a set of mid-sized peer regions, right? These regions tend to be 1 million, 2 million, 3 million people, right? About the size of ours. They tend to have a similar economic structure to ours. And we did some work with Brookings, it's now, 5, 6, 7 years ago, and they said, really look to these regions when you think about economic development and your competitors. Of course, you have to be cognizant of the California context, but you're really thinking about Salt Lake City, Austin, Charlotte, Indianapolis, right? And what's going on there. So when you look at these set of peer regions, you actually see that our region has the second highest home prices of that peer group. On the one hand, that could be a good thing. If you're a homeowner looking to sell, right, you appreciate that, right? If you're a homeowner looking to take out some equity, right, you appreciate that. But from the lens of what we heard from the focus groups and the workshops of the challenge of breaking into the housing market, this can be a really key challenge when you say, second highest home prices in their peer group. When you look at rents, it's a similar story, right, of third highest rents. And both of these are 2025 data, so really recent of sort of what's going on in the housing market. And these are for the 6-county region. When you look at housing, of course, you have to be understanding who's sort of bearing this cost of high housing. When you look at sort of housing cost burden, and what this means is how much a household has to contribute to cover the cost of housing, how much of their income. You see those stark disparities by race, ethnicity, where the green are those households that spend 30 to 50% of their income on housing, and the blue is those that spend above 50, and this is gross income on housing. You see those disparities. And you really see in particular that it's the renters in the region that are particularly housing cost burden. So in this chart, the homeowners are the blue and the renters are the green, and across race ethnicities, right? It's the renters that are very vulnerable and are contributing a high proportion of their income to rent. And you see from a couple charts below, before, when we have really high rents in the region, you see the correlation. We look at sort of some longer term trends in home ownership, right, of what's been going on. We were having a conversation with some partners, right, who really were talking about, look at home ownership, and it's small, but you see those slight intakes upticks the last couple of years, which is definitely something we're celebrating. But if you look at sort of a little bit longer time frame, is this really maybe just coming back and recalibrating to where we were before the Great Recession, right? And so, and again, you see also those disparities by race, ethnicity. And then sort of the last one on the challenges, and we'll get to sort of what we're really excited about, right? The cost of housing is one thing. We also have to, calibrate that to income, and this is a really critical measure. And what this is the average or typical home value compared to the average, or in this case, median household income. So just to give you a simple example, let's just say the median household income was $100,000 and the average home was $300,000. The ratio would be 3, right? 300,000 over 100,000. You see 10 years ago, it was actually hovering a little bit around 3 to 4, and it's been rising through time. So while we see some really positive trends about income growth in this region, which has really been happening, the thesis has been, or the finding has been, that the housing costs have outpaced that income growth. So again, housing is becoming farther and farther out of reach for many. And if you go back then to that set of 17 peer regions, mid-sized regions, right? We tend to have slightly higher household incomes compared to many of them, but our higher housing costs, offset the higher income. So we have the second highest on this ratio of all of those. Yeah, sure.
Is there a reason that we are using a slightly different time scale between this chart and the previous one? Because you go back all the way to 2009 on the previous one, and it's showing generally it's showing a recovery in ownership statistics. Was the ratio higher before the housing crisis also?
Absolutely. That's a great point. And part of the challenge is this one, we're combining 2 data sets. So those don't have the same time frame because you get income from the census and housing costs.
We just don't have the data.
But it's absolutely true that before, part of the reason it was maybe artificially low. Maybe it was low in 2012.
The housing crisis was because this got out of whack in part.
Yeah. But we're very confident that the numbers you see in 2021 and 2022, a 6, a 7, that ratio is higher than when it was pre-Great Recession.
Gotcha.
So it's not, when this one, you're saying maybe it's just getting back to where it was. We believe that this
Returned
one
and
is
exceeded.
returned and exceeded.
I
But you're
gotcha.
absolutely, the time frame is a critical part of that.
Mr. Chair, may I?
Yes.
Quick question. So just to clarify, this is for home purchase values as well as rent?
This chart is just for home, the home value. So it's not the sales
Okay.
price, it's the home value, but this does not include rent. You can create a separate chart for rent, but the scale is going to be different.
I understand.
But
Okay.
Median
then-
home value against median income.
Yes, it's the 40th to 60th percentile home value. So in essence, the median home value to median income.
Got it.
Yeah,
Does this include multifamily or is it?
it does.
Okay,
But because of our housing stock, right, single family is the larger
right.
component of that.
Yeah,
Yes.
okay, thank you.
And again, we have the rental side of this. It's just sort of a different scale, but it's a similar trend. Yeah. So probably, right, I think these are things you hear about, year in, year out. And then Tchaikovsky, you're talking about the time series. And then we'll just use this as one example. Lo and behold, in 2023, right, you actually see this income maybe coming, or this ratio, coming back down. And this is sort of like where we want to pivot and start talking about, right, some of the trends we've seen, especially in the last couple of years, right, and how we really think this aligns to what the blueprint talks about as sort of the future of the region. So I'm going to spend the rest of the time just talking about the findings in this report. And in this, we lean heavily on SACOG's own permit database, right? And so I know we're getting to the tail end of 2025, but this covers up to the end of 2024. And we do a lot of work to get all of those numbers in and to quality control them, and then really hone in on sort of like what we saw in 2024 in terms of housing. The first point is, right, the housing rebound. And then, the tagline is we're at a near 2-decade high of housing production in the region. So collectively, all the new housing that has been built in the region, about 12,500, the highest level since 2005. And what's interesting is if you look at this compared to the blueprint projection for what you're about to adopt, this actually exceeds that annual projection. It's actually been exceeding it for the last couple of years. So the region is on pace to meet sort of what the housing is envisioned in the blueprint. And again, we've seen this very substantial rebound.
If I can just chime in though, I mean, that is obviously a good trend, but we're still at 50% of what the peak was. And that's why our housing shortage is what it is. I mean, we've got to figure out a way to break loose with more units than just saying we did better than last year.
Yeah.
Like we need to be getting back to those early 2000s numbers.
And I think if you look then at the long-term projection in the blueprint, I think there's, right, changing demographics, especially in terms of population growth when you go out 10, 20 years. So it's probably going to be a very aspirational. I think we're going to reach back to the early 2000s in terms of just sort of the growth that can be expected for the region. But absolutely, right, you need to have that in the context.
What was the annual number we needed to aim for to meet the long-term projection?
About 10,000 units a year
Annually.
annually.
On average.
On average.
On average.
Yeah. And you can say we hadn't met it obviously the last 10 years. So there's, recouping for that. But I think the 2000s, early 2000s, it was a couple things going on. One, that was a super hot housing market nationally, but also particularly for our region, right? So absolutely, when we think about how much housing we can be building, but yeah, those are very hard numbers to see how we're going to get year over year.
Is that 10,000 per year to like maintain status quo, meet sort of ongoing demand?
That's a great question. So that roughly 10,000 per year is to meet the blueprint long-term projection, which is sort of what we reasonably expect the region, right, will see in terms of growth over that time frame. It's not going to be a linear, right? We annualize it. We actually think it's going to start higher and slow down. But this is sort of that growth projection that you talked about years ago. I know it's not fresh in your mind about when you look at demographics, you look at sort of economics, and you look at housing production, and you try to pair them all together, what the region can reasonably expect.
And I appreciate that this is seen through the lens of the blueprint and of growth projections. I guess where I'm coming from is what we're feeling and what the market is showing us for people who can't afford housing right now is that if you start in 2008 and go to about 2008, 16 or 18, then there is 10 years in there where we were at a quarter or half what our
Absolutely.
production should have been.
Yep.
So we have makeup
Yep.
that needs to be done, and then we can coast at the 10,000 to meet demand,
Yep.
right?
Absolutely. yeah.
Okay.
And then, when we're thinking about how we talk about our region, right, in the context of California, this is looking at housing production relative to the region's size, so per 1,000 residents. And so the SACOG region has produced the most housing per 1,000 residents of any region in California last year. Not just last year, but the last 8 years in a row. And then we started tracking this in 2001. So I think it's 18 of those 24 years, the SACOG region has outpaced the rest of the state in terms of most housing production per capita. So again, it's just, something we've been communicating to our state partners, but I think it's a really critical point of talking about, what the region can do collectively in terms of housing. I think it's, aligned with what we're talking about in the blueprint. Of course, the blueprint's talking about housing of different product types or different incomes or different life stages. Something that's been a real critical policy issue you've been delving into in this plan cycle and in prior ones is sort of what is it achievable to be thinking about sort of the product type and the blueprint between single family, large lot, small lot, and attached product. And so we have seen in the last couple of years, right, is a more balanced portfolio of the new housing coming on, where the dark green is the large lot, and this is all new housing coming on. Dark green is the large single family, the blue is the small lot single family, and then the purple is the attached. And so actually, again, we started tracking in 2001, so this isn't forever, but the number of attached housing units that came online last year in the region is the highest we've ever seen in that series, right? And that ratio is also the highest. So again, a lot of momentum, and you see, right, over the last couple of years in particular, that attached housing coming online. So that last year, the proportion of large lot single family and attached new product built in the region was almost the same.
Well, what in this analysis constitutes a large lot?
Yeah, and we actually use a pretty low threshold. It's a lot that's 5,500 square feet and above.
Okay.
Yeah.
So modest.
So pretty modest, actually, yeah. And of course, part of the story is this diversity of products, new product types coming online, and ADUs is a key one where, just in the past 6-7 years, we've seen a 15-fold increase number of ADUs. And of course, that's part and parcel of all the work the local jurisdictions have been doing to streamline them and make them on the regulatory side. And then you're really seeing like the market, respond where, almost 1,000 ADUs were built in the region last year for accessory dwelling units. And then we have Green Means Go, right? Our infill accelerator, the region's infill accelerator, and we see all-time high in terms of both the number of units and the share of units, new housing units built in green zones, where the green is the absolute number, and then the blue is the share of new units coming in. So last year, over a quarter of all housing units that the region built occurred in your locally adopted green zones.
And the green zones are the locally adopted areas that were all the local jurisdictions adopted back when, 2019?
2019, yeah. We're not dwelling on it too much, but again, the challenge of the region, right, of diversifying its product type and getting that attached housing had been a challenge for the region for several years, but we're really seeing like those green zones are one of the key strategies of getting that attached housing product, where if you look at it, about 80% of the new housing coming into green zones is that attached product compared to outside of the green zone, right? It lends much more to single family. Makes sense, right? This is the idea behind green zones. But then if you think about where attached products being built, I think it's about 70% of all attached housing product that's come online in the last couple of years has come into green zones. These are really, I think it's a testament to the process of standing up those green zones, right? At the local jurisdictions adopting them, saying these are areas that are prime for infill growth.
Do we have a cataloging of housing that was built that was at least in part a result of work or grants that came from our Green Means Go program?
So
what's that number of this? This number.
So our Green Means Go program, right, got stood up 2019. Right, one of the first pieces of that was having the local jurisdictions adopt green zones. The funding for Green Means Go has just started to flow, right, and so we have the first sort of grant that came was from the state, and it was a much smaller amount, and that funded 2 capital projects, one project in Folsom, one project in Sac County, which are both complete. I think it's a total of 200 units, right?
Right.
So the mainstay of Green Means Go funding is actually still being spent.
Okay.
So, but I think that's why we're talking about green zones as in this context of, right, the infrastructure is coming into place.
So I'm willing to extend the influence of Green Means Go a little farther in that identifying the green zones focused people's attention on areas that deserved redevelopment, new development, infill development. So I get what you're saying,
Yeah.
and it's going to be interesting over time to track where investment was made from Green Means Go and what that resulted in.
Yeah.
And I hope that we do that, but I guess I was,
I appreciate it. I
plug
was
out
being
there.
a little
Yeah,
more.
I'm gonna catch it.
conceptually-
I'm gonna catch it and take it.
Yeah.
So if you go back even a little bit further, right? These green zones, by being locally adopted, they are based on the fact that your cities and counties have already been doing work to try to revitalize these areas. So many of you have adopted plans that say we want more of this kind of housing. And if you don't have adopted plans, you have them in the works, right? Because that was part of the work of us saying, what is a green zone? So I completely agree with you. The fact that we said these are green zones, I think does call attention and focus attention on bringing them online. The funding from Green Means Go is to say, okay, great. And now we need to do this faster because we have so much more of these plans to build out.
Yeah, not every part of every green zone needs special investment, but the ones that do, there's now an opportunity. And thank you for hitting the softball out of the park. Garrett, please carry on.
I was getting there, but Casey jumped to it. And talking about housing at a variety of income, progress in seeing more housing coming at a variety of income levels. Of course, there's still more to be done, but you're seeing, right, most we've ever done in the last couple of years. So with all that said, right, we know housing, as Director Hume said, we're digging out of a big hole. Housing affordability is a major thing, and there's still a lot more work to do. Even with these really positive numbers, we're still fewer units in the centers and corridors. These are a little bit of a different terminology, but sort of your main streets, you can think of them as analogs to green zones, but it's a little bit different. So we're still not producing quite as many new units in centers and corridors even last year than what the blueprint calls for over the next 15 years plus. And then this one is the same thing. In this series, I've annualized it the last 5 years, right? Because we've seen the trend going up. But if you look at the far left, the attached, right? The light green is what we've done the last 5 years. The blue is what the blueprint says we need to be doing moving forward. Attached still is, a thing we only be focused on. But of course, as we have Green Means Go that stood up, and we have a lot of positive momentum there. So all to say, things we're going to be tracking right through our progress report and our monitoring. We'll come back next year with a to be determined, but that dashboard is where all this stuff lives in real time. So if you have any questions, right, please feel free to reach us out of, what is going on with attached housing. And we report it at the regional level, but we also have it at the jurisdictional level. And Supervisor Bradford, your point from a few weeks back is a good one. We need to think about, you talked about the unincorporated county and communities there. So we're working on that, but we have it at the region at the jurisdiction level, and we're looking to bring it out in other geographies. So I'll stop there and see if you have any questions.
Any questions from directors? All right, excellent. Okay, any final commentary from any staff? All right. All right, there's one item on our file for your review at your leisure, directors. If there are no questions on the receive and file items, we'll move on to other matters. Other matters, this is time for any member of the board to provide updates or address issues for any item not on the agenda. Okay, hearing none, the Land Use and Natural Resources Committee will reconvene, or we're adjourned now, and we will reconvene on Thursday, December 4th, 2025 at 1:30 in this same room. Thank you very much, everybody. We're adjourned.